Welcome to TrineDay's Roundtable 34, planning the healing ceremony for November 22nd, Resurrecting JFK's Spirit of Peace. I am Bruce DeTorres, moderating. Authors Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould will present how we discovered the deep truth behind JFK's assassination through the magic of Love Field Airport. Then, psychotherapist, poet, podcaster, stand up comic, and author Matt Vaughn will share some thoughts on the ceremony and how it relates to his book, My Cosmic Trigger High Strangeness in Theory and Practice. And then we'll do questions and answers at the end. But first, our host, who has published around 200 books that challenge official history, books that can be found at TrineDay.com, Chris Milligan.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you all for attending here. Like I've said before, there's plenty of other things that people could be doing, but here we are trying to quote unquote save the world. And I generally start this off with some words of JFK, and I'm going to do that. And this one's a little rather long, but this was a speech that he did as a senator in September of 1960 in Houston, Texas. And this was before the Greater Houston Ministerial Association. While the so-called religious issue is necessarily and properly the chief topic here tonight, I want to emphasize from the outset that we have far more critical issues. The hungry children I saw in West Virginia, the old people who cannot pay their doctor bills, the families forced to give up their farms, an America with too many slums, with too few schools, and too late to the moon and outer space. There are real issues which should decide this campaign, and they are not religious issues. For war and hunger and ignorance and despair know no religious barriers. For while this year it may be a Catholic against whom the figure of suspicion is pointed, in other years it has been and may someday be again a Jew or a Quaker or a Unitarian or a Baptist. It was Virginia's harassment of Baptist preachers, for example, that helped lead to Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom. Today I may be the victim, but tomorrow it may be you. And until the whole fabric of our harmonious society is ripped at a time of great national peril. Finally, I believe in an America where religious intolerance will someday end, where all men and all churches are treated as equal, where every man has the same right to attend or not attend the church of his choice, where there is no Catholic vote, no anti-Catholic vote, no blocking vote of any kind, and where Catholics, Protestant, Jews, and others at both the lay and pastoral level will refrain from those attitudes of disdain and division, which have so often marred their works in the past, and promote instead the American ideal of brotherhood. That is the kind of America in which I believe, and it represents the kind of presidency in which I believe a great office that must neither be humbled by making it the instrument of any one religious group, nor tarnished by arbitrarily withholding its occupancy from the members of any one religious group. I believe in a president whose religious views are his own private affair, neither imposed by him upon the nation or imposed by the nation upon him as the condition to holding that office. This is the kind of America I believe in. And this is the kind I fought for in the South Pacific, and the kind my brother died for in Europe. No one is suggesting that we might have a divided loyalty, that we did not believe in liberty, or that we belong to a disloyal group that threatened the freedoms for which our forefathers died. And in fact, this is the kind of America for which our forefathers died, when they fled here to escape religious test oaths that denied office to members of less favored churches, when they fought for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Virginia State Statute of Religious Freedom, and when they fought at the shrine I visit today, the Alamo. For side by side with Bowie and Crockett died McCafferty and Bailey and Carey, but no one knows whether they were Catholics or not, for there was no religious test at the Alamo. Whatever issue may come before me as president, birth control, divorce, censorship, gambling, or any other subject, I will make my decision in accordance with these views, in accordance with my conscience tells me to be the national interest, and withhold regard to outside religious pressures or dictates. And no power or threat of punishment could cause me to decide otherwise. But if the time should ever come, and I do not concede any conflict to be even remotely possible, when my office would require me to either violate my conscience or violate the national interest, then I would resign the office and hope any conscientious public servant would do the same. I do not intend to apologize for these views to my critics of either Catholic or Protestant faith, nor do I intend to disavow either my views or my church in order to win this election. If I should lose on the real issues, I shall return to my seat in the Senate, satisfied that I have tried my best and was fairly judged. But if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of being president on the day they were baptized, then it is the whole nation that will be the loser.
Mm-hmm.
But if, on the other hand, I should win this election, then I shall devote every effort of mind and spirit to fulfilling the oath of the presidency. Practically identical, I might add, to the oath I have taken for 14 years in the Congress. For without reservation, I can solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. So help me God. Now I'm going to read just a few words from another speech that we're all quite familiar with. One reason I really enjoy this speech too is because my father helped set up the world study groups at American University. This is the commencement address from June 10th, 1963, parts of it. World peace, like community peace, does not require that each man love his neighbor. It requires only that they live together in mutual tolerance, submitting their disputes to a just and peaceful settlement. As history teaches us that enmities between nations, as between individuals, do not last forever. However fixed our likes and dislikes may seem, the tide of time and events will often bring surprising changes in the relationships between nations and neighbors. So let us persevere. Peace not be impractical. The war need not be inevitable. By defining our goal more clearly, by making it seem more manageable and less remote, we can help all people to see it, to draw hope from it, and to move irresistibly toward it. So let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interest and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot end now our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. You know, growing up, when I did, I just turned 75. And as a youngster, the hope that was generated by JFK's presidency was palatable. His loss was also palatable. onwards to a better future.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And as delicious as his presidency was, I'm sure you meant the impact was palpable.
Yes.
And now, authors, investigators, husband and wife, Paul Fitzgerald and Elizabeth Gould.
Thank you, Bruce. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming to the inaugural roundtable for the kickoff campaign for leading to the November 22nd healing ceremony that we're here to talk about. We really wanted to give you a more solid idea of how we actually came up with this idea. When we look back at our own trajectory and look at where we were, over 30 years ago, okay, we did not have a glimmer of an idea that we were going to be sitting here today talking about the importance of Love Field Airport and JFK's assassination. It isn't just about Love Field. It isn't just about the JFK assassination and turning it into his resurrection and the spirit of peace. It is about understanding the process that we all are engaging in and beginning to become more aware of the real potential we all have to take certain steps along the way that we might not be sure about, but to become conscious at a new level of what we might be doing. And that's what this really gave us, because we knew at points along the way we had to make shifts and we had no idea where we were going. So this is really, I said, it's a summary, considering we're dealing right now with over 30 years of a walking process. So how we discovered the deep truth behind JFK's assassination through the magic of Love Field Airport is what I'm going to lay out. After 61 years of asking who's to blame, it's time for all Americans to come together with the citizens of Dallas to break the spell that keeps us from the bright future we want and deserve. We've come to a profound understanding of how the resurrection of JFK's spirit of peace through the magic of Love Field will fulfill that goal. On looking back to what drew our attention to Love Field in 2023, we were reminded of our own choices made in 1981 and how the path we chose to get here was inspired by, ironically, JFK's favorite poet, Robert Frost, in his poem, A Road Not Taken. That year, we became the first American journalists to gain access to Afghanistan following the expulsion of all Western media after the 1979 Soviet invasion. Getting the first visa to enter Kabul with a film crew for CBS News was a big scoop after a blackout of 18 months. But we never imagined back then that touching the ground of Afghanistan would lead us to Love Field and the deep truth about the JFK assassination 43 years later. But that is exactly what happened. After witnessing CBS's willful misuse of our facts on Afghanistan and its transformation into propaganda, we continued to challenge the mainstream narrative through ABC News and PBS and received the same results. Back then, most Americans believed that freedom of the press was not only a constitutional right, but that it actually meant something. We had yet to face the truth that no matter what facts we unearthed, the official narrative on Afghanistan would remain the voice of the CIA, and there was little we could do to change that. Well, faced with that reality, we finally asked ourselves, if facts didn't matter, what did? So in 1987, we decided to follow the road not taken and started writing screenplays, and by early 1990s had developed 4. Then in September of 1991, our 10-year-old daughter Alyssa told us of a dream with Paul's deceased father, accompanied by a man who told her he was 800 years old. We already knew the Fitzgerald family had come to Ireland 800 years before as mercenaries for King Henry II and decided the dream was a mystical message, but where did it lead? After 3 months of researching the Fitzgerald history, we saw Oliver Stone's film JFK and found the clues that would unlock the meaning of our daughter's message. Stone's decision to include secret societies in his telling resonated with us. In our research into the 1169 Norman invasion of Ireland, largely run by the Fitzgerald family, we found motivations for why some secret societies would target JFK as retribution for past offenses. We had hoped Stone would be interested in this story, but he wanted our Afghanistan story instead. So although our 3 years of work with Stone did produce the Three Knights of Desmond script concept, it was never fulfilled. Then 30 years in the making, we finally brought that concept to fruition in 2021 in our memoir series, Valediction, Three Knights of Desmond, along with Valediction, Resurrection. Since then, our publisher, Chris Milligan, has been hosting monthly roundtable discussions based on our memoir, giving us the platform to further explore the Fitzgerald legacy. It is through Valediction Revelation, the last of our three-part memoir, that the fulfillment of what Chris had inaugurated comes full circle. Our story begins in Boston at the Parker House Hotel press room in 1981, where Paul stood at the exact spot where JFK announced his candidacy for Congress in 1946 and held his bachelor party in 1953. It then comes to a shocking conclusion at Love Field Airport in Dallas, 2023, following the JFK assassination conference, where Paul delivered the address on the Fitzgerald legacy. But it wasn't until we were leaving Dallas and entered Love Field for the first time that we knew what needed to happen next. Love Field represents the final moments in JFK's life, the place where he arrived in the morning alive and left deceased that afternoon. Since this place was the location of JFK's final destination and a mystical crossroad between heaven and earth, this location awaits our delivery of JFK's spirit of peace. We decided a healing ceremony at Love Field is the answer. Once activated, we can continue to put our collective imaginations together to manifest JFK's spirit of peace back into all of our lives where it belongs. And the kickoff campaign, as you know, will be November 22nd, 2024. The healing ceremony will take place at 2:30 at Central Time at the Bronze Spirit, a flight statue near the entrance of Love Field Airport. The world is welcome to join in the ceremony from wherever you are. We have a number of articles that are connected to this work that we are going to leave in the chat. So if you're interested in following up with any more information, the links will be in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, Matt Vaughn.
All right. All right. So happy to be here, everybody. So the title of my talk today is touching down on Love Field to break down the alchemical spell toward a downward-inspired magic of high strangeness. So I will be fleshing out an essay about these topics, but this is sort of my initial thoughts. The reason Chris wanted me to speak today is because my book, My Cosmic Trigger, High Strangeness in Theory and Practice, resonated so much with the Love Field project. So first, a little bit about my book. George Knapp, the legendary journalist and one of the hosts of Coast to Coast AM, said the book, every page of the book packs a punch. It's a great read. Paul Levy, the author of 3 books on the Wetiko mind virus, and which ties in, I believe, to the Love Field project, said the book was sure to become a classic. And a disgruntled reader on Amazon said it was a vanity piece at best, not terribly engaging. Quote, I requested a refund. Now, I do not know if Chris has facilitated the refund, but that will be up to Chris. So the reason I point that out is because my book, which I predicted, it definitely polarizes. So I knew it would be very well received or the opposite. So I hope today what I present is very well received. In the book, one of the main concepts in the book is that my research leads me to that there is a war in heaven between ultra-terrestrial forces, interestingly enough. And this cosmic war has two fronts. This is a two-front cosmic war. It manifests on Earth over power, over control of power spots and ley lines, and over timelines. But we won't have time today to get into the temporal war. That is a whole nother roundtable. But these power spots are important because at these power spots is where people, magicians, good and bad, have their spells have more power, where they have more energy. So you cast the spell at these spots to control the human mind. Now, these power spots are sometimes called vortexes or high strangeness window areas, sacred spots. The most famous that we all know is Stonehenge. So in the book, I talk about the theories on how these power spots are created. One is that they are created through large deposits of quartz. But for the purposes of today, we'll look at one of the theories, which is that a power spot is created when a holy person dies in the area. So I believe one of the things that we're doing with the love field ceremony is transforming the alchemical spell that was cast in the killing of the king ritual. So one way we're doing that is recognizing that JFK died in Love Field, died in quotes. He didn't die in Dealey Plaza at the Masonic Triangle. He actually died at Love Field, meaning that is where Johnson took his oath of office. So that is where JFK's earthly role died. So by acknowledging that, we are making Love Field a sacred spot, a sacred space, and shifting the negative alchemical spell from Dealey Plaza over to Love Field. Here's how I see the Love Field ceremony, and what's really interesting is, and I'm really just blown away because I wasn't expecting to become part of this project, and the Love Field ceremony is literally everything I write about in my book, and also it is volume 2 of my book, which is My Cosmic Trigger, Perilous Chapels and Highly Strange Magic, which I'm working on now. This is literally a test case for highly strange magic, which high strangeness magic is all about reclaiming the ley lines and the power spots for the forces of good. And it's also about developing positive egregores. So an egregore we can think of as a group mind. So sports teams have egregores, nations have egregores, group minds. So what we're doing here is healing, releasing the JFK spirit of peace into the egregore of the nation state of the United States, thereby healing the egregore. So speaking of songs, Bruce, one of the songs that I use in this presentation is Bob Dylan's Murder Most Foul. That was released in 2016, and it is a 15-minute song about the JFK assassination. And I believe that song is sort of the soundtrack to this ceremony, in a sense. So I will quote some of the lyrics from the song in this presentation. So Dylan says, "But his soul's not there where it was supposed to be at. for the last 50 years, they've been searching for that. So, as a nation, we have been searching for his spirit of peace. His soul of peace has been missing. And with the love-filled ceremony, we are releasing it into the egregore. And I see this ceremony as an antidote to the killing of the king ritual that James Shelby Downard explained. So Dylan says, right there in front of everyone's eyes, greatest magic trick ever under the sun. So that was the greatest magic trick, the killing of the king ritual. However, they weren't expecting us, y'all, TrineDay authors. This is the most greatest magic trick. So we're trumping that. So Dylan says, Dealey Plaza, make a left-hand turn, the place where faith, hope, and charity died. And Paul and Liz in their writing have asked if this tragedy, the killing of the king, may it be undone by a more powerful method. And I argue, and they argue as well, that love is the most powerful method. So the ceremony on November 22nd, that love is going to be, the love energy is going to be introduced, which will cause a rebirth of faith, hope, and charity. Now, let's look at the power of the dreaming mind. So Paul and Liz talk about their work being triggered by dreams and strange coincidences. And my involvement in this is exactly the same, dreams and coincidences. And I had a strange dream where James Shelby Downard came to me. But first, I wanted to say why I feel James Shelby Downard helps break the alchemical spell. So his work, and I cannot recommend it enough, shows you the underlying currents of history. So when we see the underlying currents, it breaks the subliminal hold that it has on us. We have to see it for the subliminal hold to be broken. This is very similar to the Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy sees the wizard behind the curtain. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. So when we see the man behind the curtain, it breaks the spell. When Dorothy saw the man behind the curtain, he lost his power. All right. So in October of 2022, I had a dream where James Shelby Downard came to me. It was at the time I was working on my book. Of course, I was familiar with James Shelby Downard, but I wasn't fully invested in all of his theories and knew exactly how important he was. But James Shelby Downard came to me in a dream and said to me, "You will never know who I am. You will never know who I am." And then he gave me the numbers 9819 9189. Now, those add up to 9, and you could go off into a whole discourse about 9, but I will spare you that for now. So I Googled 9819 plus the word occult. Now, this is what we call Googlemancy, using Google for occult means. And I've done it before with getting strange words and numbers through dreams and other occult means, and then just Googling them, seemingly random numbers and words, and seeing what I find. So when I Googled 9819 plus occult, I was led to a book called Spells Against the Evil Spirits of Babylonia from 1903, being Babylonian incantations against the demons, ghouls, vampires, hobgoblins, ghosts, kindred evil spirits, which attack mankind, Volume 1. Now, this to me highlights the importance of a psychic protection in the magic of high strangeness, which is the love-filled ceremony. So I'm putting that out there on the record. So a psychic protection is important in some way. Perhaps this book could be a way to do that. I'll read real quick one of the incantations that I think is really cool. Evil spirit, evil demon, evil ghost, evil devil, evil god, evil fiend, unto my body may they not draw nigh. Before me may they wreak no evil, nor follow behind me. Into my house may they not enter. My fence may they not break. Into my chamber may they not enter. To me, this illustrates the very much importance of developing a psychic protection in this work. Okay, so I also found regarding number 9189, according to one source, angel number 9189, which stands for peace, freedom, inner wisdom, and new beginnings. And I think that sums up the love field process ceremony perfectly. Okay, now we're going to look at the power of synchronicity. So I only got involved in this love field project last week, thanks to Chris. Thanks a lot, Chris. So I was blown away after the meeting about it, meeting Paul and Liz for the first time, and I immediately looked at my phone. I had been messaging throughout the day a group member in my psycho-spiritual group called the Chaplains of Peril, which I talk about in the book. And I had been talking to this individual throughout the day because a Bigfoot has camped out in his backyard. Long story. So I was wondering to see what he had found with his Bigfoot in his backyard, but instead he had sent a card that was sent to him to his great grandfather, who was a Freemason. And he said, have I ever sent this to you before, Matt? And it was a card from JFK when he was a senator. It was a Christmas card or a Happy New Year card. And it was signed Best Jack. So I had definitely never seen that before. And I was really just blown away that I literally got off the call with everybody about the Love Field Project. And then the next thing I see was a message, so to say, from JFK himself. And it really felt like he was saying hello. And later, my group member pointed out that he had sent that to me at 12:22. And I have a whole experience with the number 222. And the presenter in last roundtable, Jason Bradbury, talked about 222 being one of the Masonic sacred numbers that means something is hidden within. Also, synchronicity is important to this project because, as Paul Levy points out, and I point out in my book, synchronicity is the antidote to Wetiko, which is the archetype of evil. And really, we're seeing that at play here with all the synchronicities just popping up. I have some synchronicities with Paul and Liz and with the JFK mystery that I won't bore you with. Here's how a ceremony such as this could work. Now, I want to point out, I do not feel it needs to be thousands of people at this ceremony. I believe it's already been accomplished in a certain sense, that a few people can change the large collective. Now, this ties into what I talk about in my book, what I term a retreat to the astral. So because in the physical world, the physical means of control have been, say, taken over by Wetiko, and we have little control over them. But what we do have control over is the astral, which I say retreat to the astral. And that's what I think this ceremony is doing. So with a ceremony such as this, a ritual such as this, I want to point out the true power lies not in physical actions, but in the shared belief and intention of participants to unravel centuries-old spell work that binds our collective psyche. So just us. So the reason the astral affects the physical is because the astral is where it has to happen in the astral realm first, and then it happens in the physical. So if we do this in the astral, the physical will follow. Okay, the date. The date is important. Now, I just found out about this week. According to a New Age source that I follow, and if anybody's interested, I'll lay this out in the full essay, but that I'll put on my Substack. There is New Age groups talking about the importance of November 22nd. And November 22nd, according to this group, is the closing of the 1111 doorway. And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the repeating number phenomena, 1111, 22, 222. So this group claims that the 1111 doorway reaches its final completion on November 22nd. So they say it's important because it's closing the energy of the old doorway, so a new energy comes forth. And according to this group, they claim in 1992 that 500 people got together in Egypt at Giza and opened the 1111 doorway. And now on November 22nd, they're officially closing it. I find that very significant. So, otherworldly attendees. So, in my book, I talk a lot about that at these power spots, at these portals, so to say, is where the veil between dimensions is thinnest, and that's where other entities, other energies can come forth. However, the good guys have to be invited. The good guys have to be invited, but the bad energies, the bad entities, they don't play by the rules, so they're showing up regardless. So what I say in the book is I encourage people to create your own sacred spaces, even in your own backyard, and invite angelic energies, positive energies in. Storm the portals, put our flag in the portals and claim it for the forces of good, because the bad guys aren't playing by the rules. So we have to start asking for good energies to come forth. So some of the otherworldly attendees that can come to Love Field, it's a bit of a who's invited or who's not. There's a whole debate about this. But the dead, our ancestors, and we could say Fitzgerald, the last Earl of Desmond, could come forth. There is a prophecy with him that Paul and Liz have talked about. They say, it is clear by the state of today's world that the Earl and his phantom soldiers are needed more than ever to rise and free JFK's enchained spirit. So that sounds good to me. Let's bring them in. Also, we have the Fae, the fairy folk, coming into the human life wave. They can be invited. And Paul and Liz have some stories about the Fae, and I do as well, which I talk about in the book. I happened to see gnomes when I was in elementary school. So, and also some people say Bigfoot is a fairy creature. So that is important to point out. Okay, the most importantly, I want to look at the angels and demons. So at Love Field, there is a bronze, I was told, a bronze statue that is called the Spirit of Flight statue, and it's an angel. So there is some debate. Is this Lucifer? Is this Michael? Evoking the war in heaven. Now, however, as I point out in my book, the Enochian magic, Enochian angelic magic that John Dee used is meant to facilitate or trigger apocalypse to avoid Armageddon. Now, Chris talked about this in the last roundtable, and one of the mistakes of one of the readings of Enochian magic is based on the mistake that apocalypse and Armageddon are the same thing. And colloquially, they are used as the same terms, but that's not what they literally mean. If you look at the definition, apocalypse means revelation, revealing hidden truths. Armageddon is a conflict between nation states of the Abrahamic religions. So we are trying to trigger apocalypse with Enochian magic to avoid nation state Armageddon. In my book, I talk about one of the new channeled messages, so to say, from the Enochian angels. And in this book, this new book, which I talk about in My Cosmic Trigger, the Enochian angels are saying in order to facilitate the new earth, we have to use these portals. In order to enter the portal, to go to the new earth, we have to overcome the idea that there is a war between good and evil, which to me gets at rising above the petty differences, so to say, and embracing oneness. And this ties in also to Paul and Liz's work of overcoming the Hegelian mental trap, the Hegelian, if I'm pronouncing that right, dialectic. So this is what I think the angels are referring to. So this also ties into what Paul and Liz are talking about with the love-filled ceremony transforming revenge and retribution, which is part of the killing of the king, into the resurrection of JFK's spirit of peace in the nation state. So overcoming that cycle, I believe that's what the Enochian angels are talking about, us overcoming that retribution cycle. So I believe one way to do that is through love, which Paul and Liz talk about in their work, but also through the power of hope, which I'm going to read my final quote from my presentation. To me, the power of hope helps anchor us into a positive timeline, which gets us a little bit into the positive timeline magic and the temporal war over timelines that I mentioned. So hope anchors us in a positive timeline where everything is resolved through peace and love and faith and hope and all those good things. So let me read this, page 384 for those following at home. Never forget, hope can be a radical act because hope is political, so don't lose your hope. I argue that the goal of Wetiko, the archetype of evil, is to remove hope by the inoculation of apathy, amnesia, ebula in the target population. We must shake the mind virus of apathy and ebula, embracing hope, because the flame must be revived at all costs. At all costs, we must renew in ourselves the desire and the hope for the great coming. It is because the mind virus of amnesia that we are constantly forgetting that the supernatural is a ferment, a soul, and not a completed and finished organism. Its role is to transform nature. We must embrace the supernatural. We transform ourselves and nature. So,
Amen.
That's all I got. That's all I got. I appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much, Matt. And now we can unmute, raise hands. I'll, kind of steer people, but who's got the first question or comment for anything we heard from Paul and Liz or Chris or from Matt? Anybody? Well, I'm curious, Paul and Liz, what did you make out of what Matt just shared?
Yeah, well, I think there's so much that we understood, but you really presented an architecture in thought.
He nailed it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he
exactly,
really did.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a mental structure that expanded so much on what we had intuited. We knew that there was some kind of thought form that was needed, but this was the language that we.
Well, I think you definitely helps being a psychotherapist as well as being a mystic. You really kind of got the devil by the tail, if I want to put it that way.
Yeah,
it's wonderful, Matt. Your analysis is fantastic, and it's just a really a wonderful opportunity to meet you. I'm so glad that you got drawn into our vortex.
Right, and that
I really did.
Nice to meet you, Matt.
Yeah,
Me
yeah.
too.
I
I
did.
really echo the resonance of your thoughts on having been raised in Dallas. I now live part-time there and part-time in East Texas. Um, I was on a radio talk show and they said, well, Dallas back then was known as the city of hate. And they thought it was still the same way. I said, no, that was 1963. It's not today. And this ceremony, I so looking forward to it conveying the peace and the love, because I have so wearied of the Dealey Plaza events and remembering a death when we should move forward
Yeah.
to peace and love and what the future of America and our nation and the world as a whole.
Right.
Amen.
Wow. And
Yes.
thank you for your efforts on our behalf.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful what you had to say, and you fulfilled it beautifully.
Well, it's synchronicity, like Chris said. When he invited me to help him with some projects at TrineDay, and I stepped right into it, just in Dallas at the right time, where I've lived my whole life.
Yeah.
And I feel honored, and it's very healing for me, since my father was in Tulagi Bay with JFK during World War II, and then forced to film in Dallas. It's healing for me to be a part of the Peace and Love Initiative. It's time to move on. It's time to bring on any and all spiritual aspects into the physical realm for that peace.
Right. Right.
Matt, what would you share about the sense of not only hopefulness but playfulness? There's and maybe it's just your personality, but it makes it seem very easy to deal with, evil spirits.
Well, as I talk in the book, humor is a weapon. In the face of laughter, nothing stands. Now, and that's where we tie in the trickster archetype, which in High Strangeness is so present. Also, shamans use humor. Stand-up comedians are modern day shamans. Writing this book, thank you very much, Chris, again. I have been entered. I used to not be so open to this notion of evil spirits and this sort of thing, but enough wild stuff with evil entities occurred in this process that I have to address it. Now, I am scared of them, and it's not like I can laugh at demons and that sort of thing, but it just is humor is a good tool for all stress of life.
This concept of dealing with what might be evil spirits with a loving intention to nurture and calm them, like the intention of a parent. Hang on, Matt, hang on. I can see you shaking your head. I'm just trying to make one point and get to the next person here. It's the idea of parenting ourselves and parenting everyone who might be angry, and just say, I can take it. I fear nobody because I know what I want for them, which is a sense of comfort and calm and lovingness, no matter what they might do to me, demon or human. Ruth, unmute yourself. Tell us what's on your mind.
Kind of in your camp, Bruce, because I really believe that the most powerful force in this universe is love. And that force that no demon, no dark energy can ever, they don't know what to do with love. And also, it's about actually understanding the power of our intention and how powerful it is to actually create an intention of a positive intention of having a boundary and inviting in only positive beings into the space, because I feel like what you give energy to gives them energy. And if they just create a space of positive, and that stuff is out there, but you're not giving it any power by not trying to negate it. And I also feel that what I have to speak to is the alchemy that has to happen in each person personally of unifying their heart and their mind, that the heart has to be open in order for this protection to be there, and the mind has to have come back down to the heart, and the heart has to create a river of energy between the two.
And I believe Elizabeth Gould was next. Liz, how are you?
Thank you. I actually want to comment on the whole issue of the negative energy and the dark energy. And I like to bring up the idea of the truth and the lie as my metaphor. Okay. We need to understand that the only reason the lie exists is because the truth that's being presented isn't large enough, a truth, to invite what now is called a lie. Okay, and when you talk about love, it's the same thing. If that love platform isn't large enough and genuinely open in a completely neutral way, and this is why we bring up in our analysis about the use of eros, which is defined as selfish love. You are basically trying to possess what you love. And then you get agape, which is the open platform love. So even when we're using these words, we need to understand that, and that's but the idea of the selfish love, when love turns to hate, that's what people, obviously recognize as eros now. So now you can understand, and again, I say it, the metaphor that I like to make it absolutely clear is the idea that anything that is its alter ego, and that's the whole point about when you're dealing with the thief, it's the same thing. Why is somebody turning into a thief? Because somehow the plenty on the other side has not been presented in a way that seems to be able to get to this thief. Okay. Once you take care of the problem on the other side, the thief's function will go away. That's the point. There's a reason there's a God of thieves. There is a reason there's a God of lies. Okay. And that is why it is, because it's perceived by the other. All right. And if you aren't a broad enough, open enough, generous enough, lover and controller, you are going to end up claiming that anyone who challenges you must be the lie, must be the thief.
Now, I want to say, Paul Levy talks about in the Wetiko books the importance of inoculating yourself from evil as opposed to trying to transmute it. I'm just telling what I have experienced, and I don't mean metaphorical evil entities. I mean literal things. Okay, so it's a little. That will be in volume 2. Okay, and I wasn't into this before. But also I do want to say evil works through our psyches, our unconscious. So that is why psychotherapy is so important, because the demons, perhaps real entities that exist, they can get at you through your unconscious. That's why a psychotherapeutic process is so important. And that's what I have used myself. But okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Wendell, thanks for your patience. How are you?
Good. Just wanted to say, when Matt mentioned hope, the last thing that you had read from your current book or the book that you're writing, I consider, and for most of my life, I have been informed that hope is too low a vibe, and that the vibe that I can actually play at, have arrived at after 50 years or so, the vibe is opportunity. When I hang out in hope, it's, oh, gee, yeah, we still got all these things that we have to fight against and we have to deal with. Opportunity is when the thing shows up. Ah, boy, I really don't like this. What a wonderful opportunity. The next level up from opportunity is welcome. The negativity cannot handle that. They don't know what to do with that.
That's like woo-wee. That reminds me of woo-wee, like judo.
If you resist, you get more what you resist.
I was hearing what my sister Elizabeth was saying about love, and I just wanted to expand on it because I feel the power of love is not really understood because it's been seen in such a personal way. But in terms of the matrix of existence, it is love. It is the interconnectedness of every single thing in this universe that is the power of love. And to understand how to actually see through the illusion of fragmentation within ourselves. no matter what you're looking at. And I do think that the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Bardal states is a training, the Tibetan Buddhism is a training to be able to move through the Bardal states and actually see through what look like ghouls and enormous dark beings that are coming at you, and to understand that that's your own mind. That's your own mind that you're looking at, and that the power that you have to create to stay in your center, to stay in the power of your intention and understanding of the power of seeing through to the ultimate sacredness of everything, and that has a power to actually transform darkness. That the greatest power is light, and darkness is a fragmentation from the light. And so it is small in relationship to this vast power of knowing what we're really a part of. So I just have to speak to that, because I feel as though that's what has to be known by every single human being in order to have the power to stand in the face of all of this confusion and darkness and what it is that is threatening us. To get so strong within us in the knowledge of love and our deepest soul is what we have to do together as a group.
Who's moved to reply? I am. Matt, based on what Ruth just shared, for an individual to overcome fear and to take responsibility for what they're projecting on the world, or enemies or demons, but also then we'll deal with that. And then I got to follow up.
Well, I have to agree to disagree, so to say. There is a tendency in this research to assume everything is, it's projections of our own mind and what have you. Now, I do believe that's half of it. But what I'm saying, quite literally, is there are literal entities that exist outside of ourselves in other dimensions that are good and bad. So, that's what I'm saying.
What do you make then of the multiple thousands of people who vividly describe what they experienced when they quote unquote died, and there's not a whiff of a reference to anything evil? There's only reference to eternal and infinite love.
Well, I got some research to show you, Bruce, to say otherwise. Now that's where we get into the soul trap, and it's a whole school of thought. But let's kick it. I think Liz has something she wants to say. I feel like
well, I think you're talking from the two vortexes, the ones who like to look at the world the way that Bruce described it and the way that you described it. And this meeting, it's like meeting somewhere. And I think, it's like vanilla and chocolate. Do we all have to like the same ice cream? I think we can actually have a reason why someone likes vanilla over chocolate. There are real differences there. And you wouldn't question it, okay, with ice cream. But when we choose different ways of viewing the world, we seem to feel like it's kind of all got to be, one size fits all. Okay. I don't think that is absolutely necessary. And that's why I brought up the idea that it isn't about getting rid of anything. It is about holding a relationship to the world that works for you. It works, okay? And there are people who clearly like the darkness a little more than other people who like the lightness. There are people who like to be down and dirty, so to speak, okay? And I'm not talking about sickos. I'm not obviously talking about, the kind of, horrible things we've heard about, some sicknesses that people have. I'm talking about, truly different lifestyles and different, relationships to the exact same phenomena, okay? In our talking, I think we need to have that presentation. I'm not trying to claim I know better than you. I just want you to really understand what I'm trying to say.
Now, a lot of people in this space, I feel like they will sort of hedge their bets by saying, well, maybe it's not real and this, that, and the other. So I am saying very clearly, I'm saying these, there are entities that exist outside of ourselves. Now, I'm not saying it is so cut and dry, like pure evil, like something out of Lord of the Rings, the Sauron with the eye. Now, evil, we can say, what is evil? So in Carl Rogers, the psychotherapist, he says, he defines good. Good is life enhancing. So anything not life enhancing is evil by this definition. So we're not talking so abstract because these entities, we like to sort of go off into the netherworld. I'm saying they're literal entities that exist and have lives and have families and some semblance of culture like us. They're not that different than us, is what I'm saying.
Life is as you make it. Okay. Magic is as magic does. Okay. And I mean, how many times do we as humanity need to be told, okay, there's a way to walk down here. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't kill. You shouldn't do bad things to your neighbor. You know, I mean, this has been told to us myriad of times by myriad of people. Okay. It takes heroic action, okay, to create change. I mean, it's just that's how life is. I mean, you can either, you can go along and collect your $200 as you pass go. Okay. My journey's been very interesting because, I was just having fun. And then my daddy told me some stuff that, I didn't understand, took some time to understand. Okay. And then, I wanted to talk to people about it. I couldn't find very many people I could talk about it. And if I could talk to them about it, they wouldn't be very interested. And then, I found that, if people had children, okay, because once you have a child, okay, you realize first off that there's more than you in this world, okay, and there's somebody there that if you just take them outside and put them by a bush, they're going to die, okay, so it's up to you to keep them alive. I start talking about your children's future. I mean that's why we're here. That's what we're doing, because I mean, Mr. Kennedy said it's just one ball that we're all on.
Yeah, I guess the
and then Marty.
Matt is saying, yeah, no kidding. Apparently so. There are lots of different entities. The question I have for myself is, am I a victim of that? And when I notice myself, I'm the victim of that or whatever it is, well, then I'm a victim. No. This is an opportunity. I just realized that I'm treating myself like a victim, and I'm not a victim because this is an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, I think one of the things I want to make sure we're all focusing on is the actual ceremony and the actual purpose of it. And remembering that we're building this energy field, with this discussion. This is not about ending, okay, the search for truth about JFK's assassination. Not at all. No, in fact, this is actually an attempt to try to stimulate the ones who are still hiding this information from us to realize that they have to let us see what's left. Personally, I suspect an awful lot of the really important stuff ain't there, but that's just my opinion, okay? Yep. I think that in our goal, okay, in actually building an understanding of the Fitzgerald legacy, I mean, you have to realize we came from looking at the truth about the rise of the Fitzgerald legacy, the family itself, going back 1,000 years.
Right.
This is real, very real for us. This is the fulfillment of the Fitzgerald legacy. And Paul's the Fitzgerald whose daughter had the dream with his father who got him on the course. So I think all of you have to begin to take that in, okay, and realize that, okay, and that this fulfillment is very key to the true resolution between Paul and his own father, who died when Paul was 17 after his first fight, okay? The next morning, his
not physical.
Not physical. It was an argument first, but big argument on something, all right? And the next day, his father was dead on the floor, okay? And he's lived his whole life, all right, with that burden. And this process is, we know the dream with Alyssa was a way for Paul's father to actually return, okay? And he came with a messenger that turned out to be so important and so accurate, okay? That's another part of the story we haven't even talked about today, all right? Okay? I mean, that's my point about, we have had a very long, I describe it this way about what we went through, okay? It's kind of like walking across the United States to find out what's here, rather than flying, okay? All right, that we walked a walk from 1970 when we met and all the increments in between, and had no idea where this is all going. And that's my point about so that we're trying to bring that level of the reality so that it isn't, that it can't just be dismissed. Okay. That's
Amen. Amen. And you're going to get more final thoughts before we're done. Marty, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I was just want to say that, first of all, I want to thank Matt because I feel like you put a fire under all of us. That was great. I wish you could have seen, because I was just watching Liz's face smiling. She's like beaming the whole time that you're talking. It was really fun. Chris, I wanted to say that I think if we just shifted instead of hope, saying trust. I mean, I've been doing a lot of people getting out of fear right now because there's so much chaos. Like, you can be awake, but there's trauma in your family somewhere. And then you're going, how am I going to create world peace when I don't even have peace? Can't even get my grandchildren in peace. We need to figure this out.
Who's going to be, are we going to meet there? And when, and is it, and will somebody be speaking?
Some of us are going to, you don't have to be there to be there.
right.
Yeah, I got it. But if I want to be there, I'm very serious. I don't like traveling.
If you want to be there, you have to be there.
Yeah. So when will we hear about that?
Right now, it's 11. It's Friday, 11/22 at 2:30 at Love Field Airport. No,
okay.
there's a conference. We're going to be at a conference, a JFK conference.
But it's
Follow
not the conference.
vibes. Follow the vibes.
Matt Vaughn, what final thoughts have you for us?
I have some. Thank you. I've just enjoyed this so much. So I want to send all positive energy to everybody who's listened, and it's just a dream to be here.
And we're live on Facebook.
That's right. So I want to apologize. I feel like I've created some division with the whole entity thing. Chris is saying no, so he's my boss, as it were. But I don't know what to say, y'all. I wasn't used to think this, but when things are coming to you and people are saying they've seen things, so yeah, volume 2, you guys check it out. But I don't think we have to agree on the whole, are there entities? It's about energy of hope, love. I really like what Wendell has said and some other people have said about something above hope, because I've thought of that myself. Like, hope is kind of like, damn, that kind of sucks. So I like this. There's something above hope. I like that. I don't, so I'm going to take that and integrate it. I was very inspired by Liz and how she was talking about the Fitzgerald piece tying to Paul's individual relationship with his father. So as a psychotherapist, I really appreciate that, because I think it all ties together. What we have to heal our individual psyches to accomplish the ascension is what I'm maintaining. And that's the hard work. That's hard. And so I really appreciate her bringing that to the table and putting that on record, as it were. Also, according to family lore, one of my ancestors is Charlemagne. So it was very interesting. There does seem to be this sort of ancestral current involved in this sort of healing everything at this nexus point. It does seem. And I will be at the ritual, the ceremony in the astral realm. So I don't know, maybe we can sort of do something for people who aren't there
Right.
physically, maybe a Zoom or something. But I will be there on the astral realm. You can be assured of that. But that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Matt, Paul Fitzgerald, and Elizabeth Gould.
Well, this is really this came together so quickly, and thanks to Chris, we had this amazing, wonderful experience in Dallas last year, and we really got a feeling for the people and the place. And my images of walking through Dealey Plaza, my images were still in black and white of that day when I was 12 years old, and I was so shaken at the time, and I've lived with that all through the, and what brought us together with Oliver Stone was his reviving that the immediacy of that event and the importance of it. Because I really feel as if something really was captured. It didn't die, but it was captured. And I really feel that this whole concept of, when we got to Love Field, Liz immediately, and I've learned over 54 years that, when she talks, I listen. Okay. So she said this thing about Love Field, love. We came into Love Field, something, and I said, I said, I know that it's important, and I don't know what it is. And I started going through all my papers that I've saved, and I found this thing that I'd saved from 2002, 2004, or something like that. And it was about Giordano Bruno and about his use of love. And his use of love to create spells. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is crazy. And so I kind of dove into the Giordano Bruno thing, and I had all of Francis Yates's books about the Renaissance time period and everything else. And I'm seeing the connections all started to, as you say, when you open the door, it all falls out. All the Christmas presents fell out all at once.
Nice.
And that's what this is a result. This resulted in this. And Chris immediately said, yeah, you found it. You got it. So that was a great help. He's been an inspiration all along, the entire time we've known him. So, but at any rate, I feel the power of this thing. It's been revealing itself. And I know Matt feels this way about it. And I know that Chris feels this way about these things. They just kind of, once you start listening to a voice, it starts telling you the story in its own words. And that's what we found. And that's what we're gonna make happen on the 22nd. So
thank you, Liz.
Well, I just want to remind everybody that we have a lot of real work to do, I think, to build up this understanding, because I think we want to really, become, conscious of the real mystical power that's basically being used by the mystical imperialists. And we, the people, have got to reclaim that power back to the people and understand that we have been taught to fear it, to think it's evil, okay, and all of that stuff. And we have to understand that has kept us away from learning how to engage it, learning how to work with it, making mistakes and all of that. Nothing wrong with that, okay? But this is what, this ceremony is a fulfillment, and it's something that we need. The people, I think, literally the same people who believe something was horrifically lost when JFK was assassinated, need to realize we can bring it back.
Thank you. And our host, final thoughts, Chris Mulligan.
Well, earlier I talked about hope. It was hope and optimism. And basically optimism is the belief that, yeah, maybe everything's going to be okay. But hope basically means that things can be made better through action. And talk about synchronicity. My last comments here from JFK. This was his last really speech before he went to Texas, and this was his remarks at Amherst College on October 26, 1963. Our national strength matters, but the spirit which informs and controls our strength matters just as much. This was a special significance of Robert Frost. He brought an unsparing instinct for reality to bear on the platitudes and pieties of society. His sense of the human tragedy fortified him against self-deception and easy consolation. I have been, he wrote, one acquainted with the night. And because he knew the midnight as well as the high noon, because he understood the ordeal as well as the triumph of the human spirit, he gave his age strength with which to overcome despair. At bottom, he held a deep faith in the spirit of man. And it is hardly an accident that Robert Frost coupled poetry and power, for he saw poetry as the means of saving power from itself. When power leads men towards arrogance, poetry reminds him of his limitations. When power narrows the areas of man's concern, poetry reminds him of the richness and diversity of his existence. When power corrupts, poetry cleanses. For art establishes the basic human truth which must serve as the touchstone of our judgment. The artist, however, faithful to his personal vision of reality, becomes the last champion of the individual mind and sensibility against an intrusive society and an officious state. The great artist is thus a solitary figure. He has, as Frost said, a lover's quarrel with the world. In pursuing his perceptions of reality, he must often sail against the currents of his time. This is not a popular role. If Robert Frost was much honored in his lifetime, it was because a good many preferred to ignore his darker truths. Yet in retrospect, we see how the artist's fidelity has strengthened the fiber of our national life. If sometimes our great artists have been the most critical of our society, it is because their sensitivity and their concern for justice, which must motivate any true artist, makes him aware that our nation falls short of its highest potential. I see little of more importance to the future of our country and our civilization than full recognition of the place of the artist. If art is to nourish the roots of our culture, society must set the artist free to follow his vision wherever it takes him. We must never forget that art is not a form of propaganda. It is a form of truth. And as Mr. McLeish once remarked of poets, there is nothing worse for our trade than to be in style. In a free society, art is not a weapon, and it does not belong to the spheres of polemic and ideology. Artists are not engineers of the soul. It may be different elsewhere. But democratic society in it, the highest duty of the writer, the composer, the artist, is to remain true to himself and let the chips fall where they may. In serving his vision of truth, the artist best serves his nation. And a nation which disdains the mission of art invites the fate of Robert Frost's hired man, the fate of having nothing to look backward to with pride and nothing to look forward to with hope. I look forward to an America which will reward achievement in the arts as we reward achievement in business or statecraft. I look forward to an America which will steadily rise the standards of artistic accomplishment and which will steadily enlarge cultural opportunities for all of our citizens. And I look forward to an America which commands respect throughout the world, not only for its strength, but for its civilization as well. And I look forward to a world which will be safe not only for democracy and diversity, but also for personal distinction. Robert Frost was often skeptical about projects for human improvement, yet I do not think that he would disdain this hope, as he wrote during the uncertain days of the Second War. Take human nature altogether since time began, and it must be a little more in favor of man, say a fraction of 1% at the very least, our hold on this planet wouldn't have so.
But I guess
Because of Mr. Frost's life and work, because of his life and the work of this college, our hold on this planet has increased. And again, that was the last, address that he gave before he went to Dallas.
Wow.
God bless JFK. God bless the United States of America. God bless the world, and onwards to a better future for our children.
Here, here.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.